what is up, everyone? Today we're going to go over the Stihl BR 800X. It is a machine that is going to be used here in a couple weeks, months, and it needs a good tune-up to make sure that it's good to go for the summer and fall season of 2023. It's currently the middle of January, and the owner wants to have it ready for March. That's when his business really starts to pick up. Having said that, he is a professional, so we're going to do everything that we need to, and he instructed me that anything I think that is necessary, go ahead and do it. So we're going to go over this one check item at a time and go over it. We have a box of parts right there, and we're going to do so. So, very first thing that I wanted to check was the fuel, and to my surprise, it was empty. That's good. So, if any reason you did have fuel in there, unless you literally put it in there like 2 months ago, and it's been in a relatively warm environment, not in the shed, if you live in a cold area, that's still not a good idea. You can get condensation and water can get in there. So we want to get into an area that's relatively climate controlled. If that is not met, it's only a small amount of fuel, dump it out. In fact, I carry glasses for this exact reason, to dump it into, and then later if I need to use it for a different machine, if it looks okay, I will. But for these machines, I don't care. It needs to be good fuel. In that fuel, we do need to put a mix. Here's the thing about that, because it is a BR 800, I made a video on the engine that can go into specifics. It does need a specific type of fuel. I personally do not have it. However, I do believe that the Echo oil I use is going to be sufficient. After doing a little research and comparison, I do believe it's going to be fine. But just in case, I did inform the owner, and he does have quite a bit of the real oil you're supposed to use. We're going to use a very minimal amount of the one that I have just for testing purposes primarily. That's really not going to matter too much. Long-term use, however, you're going to want to use the right oil. So the first tip is put the fuel in with the right oil for these blowers. Anything above, I think it's a 600, perhaps even a 4, I'm not 100% sure. Just get the right oil for a 6 and above, and you should be fine. So having said that, one of the very first things we're going to do after the fuel is look at the fuel filter. Now the fuel filter, if this is going to be your own personal machine you only use for a few hours a year, I don't want to say it's not important to check, because it is, but if it's still in good condition, I'd probably leave it. This is actually still in very good condition. And while we have this, we're going to look at the fuel line. The fuel line is not something I would consider yearly maintenance. These can last many, many years. As long as it's in good condition, that one's fine. But the fuel filter is not. So I have another filter here. It's not a direct replacement, but it should be pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and get those switched out. Now, here's the thing. You see how that fuel filter wanted to go right there when I just let go of it? That's not good. Look at the tank. If you were going to look at it, the fuel filter's right here. Look at the level of fuel it's not getting. If you replace your fuel filter, which are weighted by the way, there's a reason why they're a little heavier than you would expect, and you just put it in there like that, you're going to get to a point where you're about halfway down with your tank, and it's going to start to die on you. You're not wondering why. That's the reason why your fuel filter is probably above the line of fuel. You can test that if you kind of angle it to one side that you think it's on and it starts to run again or prime again. That's the reason why. Or you could just look in there. I mean, if you have eyes, that's a pretty good way to finding that out. I'm going to get that fuel filter replaced and put it back in the correct location. You're not going to be able to see it through the entrance, but the fuel filter is now right there on the bottom of the tank. So it is in a good location. Next is going to be the air filter, because we have the fuel taken care of. I didn't put any fuel on it yet, but with the fuel line inspected and a new filter filter installed. Next is going to be the air filter. This is the air filter, just came out of it. There's a leaf, it's dirty. Fuel is on the bottom, kind of soaked the bottom portion of it, and oil. So it's not horrible. If this was the personal machine, I would say that filter's fine. This is what came out of its brother, though. You can tell that it's definitely a lot more condensed with junk, and it's black. Don't even worry. On a Stihl, where is it? Here we go. Filter on the side. Hopefully you can see it. There is a part number. Look for that, or type in BR800X and get a new filter. Now you have to be careful. You want to look at the filter, because sometimes some websites will just say it is, but they'll give you something completely different. Don't be that. Get the right one. And you also, if you are going to be keeping it, you can go ahead and just take an air compressor, a can of compressed air, and just kind of blow it out. You probably would be fine. But considering this is a professional, or if you're going to be using it a lot, new air filter is needed. So I'm going to go ahead and put the new filter in, and then we should be good to go. The next item we're going to look at is this bulb right here. It's in good condition. Coloring is not really all that important. If it's a little dark, that's not that big of a problem. But is it pliable? Is it cracked? If it's like the one you see right here, where it's not cracked, it's still pliable, you're good. If you suspect it's going to last a year, go ahead and just leave it. This is not 100% replaced or needing to be replaced every single year, but if it is getting to be a little questionable, just go ahead and replace it. If it was getting kind of, I don't even know how to explain it. It's like, you know, when plastic starts to degrade, it kind of feels like gritty almost, and that's not a good sign. This is nice and soft. It feels like plastic, so that's a good sign. I'm not worried. But if yours is feeling anything else, or it's looking pretty bad, or even starting to crack a little bit, just replace it. Don't even think about it, just buy it. It's cheap. So this is the part where also, if you're not a professional, you could probably skip it, but you should at least inspect it. I'm going to show you how to inspect it, but I'm going to be replacing the spark plug. Now, do you need to do this? No, probably not. As long as it's in good condition, it's probably going to last for a very long time. These are NGKs, they're not cheap. If you have a cheap plug, yeah, it might be a good idea to replace it, but this is an NGK plug. They're meant to last for a long time, and they do last for a long time. But just because, like I said, it is professional, or if you want to make sure that you never have a problem, feel free to go ahead and replace the plug. I'm going to get this plug out though. We're going to inspect it, so if you don't want to replace it, you can at least know what you're looking at. And this is the plug that came out of it. It's not bad, it's not horrible, but it's also not good, which is why we're replacing it. But if you saw this, what you're going to want to look for is make sure it's not caked in carbon, or it's literally like crusty. That's not good. That means you have a problem and you need to fix it, and replacing the plug is not fixing the problem. You need to make sure the gap is roughly about 30 thousandths, and this one looks like it could be. Make sure the diode in the center isn't worn down to like nothing. It should be pretty flat and crisp on the edges, so if it's not, it's bad. Go ahead and replace it. And conveniently enough, if you aren't sure what plug you need, every single spark plug has a code on the side. Go to your local hardware store, online, wherever you want to go, and take the plug or just take the code and buy a brand new one. Now, I have purchased aftermarket kits for something like this before for people who want to have it a little cheaper. I don't really recommend that, but let's say you did. You're going to get a plug like this. It looks great, right? It looks brand new, looks shiny, looks like it's relatively the same plug. It even has the same code on it. So that could be a little confusing. However, this is crap. 100% junk. Don't use this. This probably won't even last a year. You could be lucky and have it last a year. Maybe I'm just the unlucky one that got all of the bad ones. But more likely than not, I'm not. And that plug is garbage. So this is good for an emergency. I don't know why you need a leaf blower emergency or what type that would be, but imagine if you did have one. This isn't horrible to keep in your, drawer somewhere with the knowledge of knowing that when you do have to use this, it's time to get a new one. If I only had these two options, I would just put this one right back in. Now, this is specifically for these 4-mix machines, so it's not going to be for a leaf blower in general. But if you do have one of these 4-mix machines, you're going to have a set of valves here. This is a perfect time, because we already have the cover off, to check the clearance of the valves. I already have a video on that, so I'm not going to show you, but it's a perfect time to check the clearance, because they do work their way out. It is a service interval that you should follow. Look at your instruction manual if you do have a 4-mix, and it should tell you when you should inspect it at the very least, or adjust it when needed. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I don't suspect this one is going to have that much of a problem, but just in case, I'd rather inspect it at the moment and not have to do it once I think it's all done. So here's the thing with these machines. Stihls love to get gunky. What I mean gunky is there's a spark arrestor in there. And that spark arrestor, if you're not using the right oil or you're not using it correctly, loves to get plugged up with, of course it's a different size, loves to get plugged up with carbon and stuff like that. And when that happens, you can run into pretty much the same problem as if you're running the machine on choke. So we're going to be looking at the spark arrestor. This particular one, you have to take off this little cover. So I'm going to go ahead and get that taken off, save you the noise, and we'll take a look at that. And here is a spark arrestor that I removed. It's not bad. You can tell it's on the verge of having a little bit of artery clogging about to occur in a little bit. But if you were to run this, it would run fine. But because I already have it out, I'm going to go ahead and get it cleaned up. To get it clean, I just take a pair of pliers, hold it, and I personally take a cylinder of MAP gas, get it red hot, burns off the carbon, blow it off, install. You can also use carb cleaner and a brush. Just make sure to be careful, you don't want to ruin it. And you don't want to remove it. Pretty much, I think that's illegal, at least it is where I live, so you don't want to do that. So I'm going to get this cleaned up, reinstalled, and then we're going to do pretty much the final bits of this machine. As a bonus tip, notice the sides of these, they're not closed. You don't have to take the screws out. Just saves you from dropping them inside the case. Okay, now we are just going to do pretty much the final step, and that is just general information about the machine. Look at it. Does it look, there's something broken? Pull on the pull cord. Does the pull cord retract? Granted, you're going to want to do it all the way. Is it the pull cord frayed? Like, look at this. That right there is going to be a problem. I already have a video on how to replace that, so go ahead and watch that one. But that's something to look at. Another big thing with leaf blowers are the straps in good condition. Right here loves to break. I've seen countless attempts to repair that with the most horrific ideas. The worst one being, non-galvanized like steel wire that can just like stab you in the back of the neck. That's going to be fun. At the very least, you're going to get a tetanus shot. But yeah, just look around, see if there's anything else. Is the tube also in good condition? Are we having cracks everywhere? Do we need to replace anything? Does it turn off? That little clip for the tube is very useful. Is that missing? Granted, you may not have that one. That's a Stihl. A couple others have it, but if you don't, then I'm sure you're aware. And other than that, just kind of look at it. Make sure everything's good to go. If you do all this, you should be set. Let's just go over what we've done. We've looked at the fuel. fuel line is good, fuel filter is good, the primer is good, new air filter plug. We looked at the spark arrestor and cleaned it. We're going to replace the line here shortly, and everything else is in good working condition, so we should be set. If we follow these rules, your blower is going to be able to go through all of summer and all of fall, more importantly, most likely, without having any major problems, given the fact there's not an accident. Any maintenance related problems, you're going to avoid like 95% of them. Can never be 100, I'm sorry, but you're going to avoid a lot of them, so you should get a lot of good use out of this. I'm going to go ahead and leave you at that. Follow me on Instagram at SmallEngine101. Definitely subscribe, and don't forget to leave a comment and a thumbs up. That helps me a lot. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to help out as well. And have a good rest of your evening. Later.